Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are back. We are live. I'm Jay Scott, Crypto Cowboy.
Hey, Sandy, Freedom Faith Warrior.
And we're back ready for some live Q&A. Hopefully you guys will pop in. Let us know
Yeah,
what's up, your questions, your comments.
bring us some questions.
Okay, where is that coming from? Hold on.
Don't know.
Did you hear that?
Uh-huh.
You can hear that too. I don't know where it's playing from. Hold on. Oh, you know where it's playing from? Boom. Okay. That was interesting. Okay. Hey, we got to do the banner. So hold your horses.
Right?
All right. Everything's back to normal. Life is good.
Back to normal. All right. Normal. I don't
I
think
don't know.
normal is ever going to be a thing
You don't think so?
again.
Could be
No, I think
right.
we're
You
done
could
with
be right.
normal.
We are in
We are
for
done with
crazy.
normal. The only thing normal in this country is the town named Normal in Illinois. That's it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's
Yeah,
the
well,
only
good
thing.
luck to them too. Yeah, hopefully. And the rest of us, because we got some crazy times. This election is going to be crazy town. Do you think it's crazy town already in the election?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe that's what we're going to talk about today, huh?
I think it's a circus already, and I don't feel like being a juggler. I just don't.
A
I
juggler.
just don't. A juggler. I don't think I'm going to the carnival this time. Or the circus or whatever it is. Whatever's happening is like this big event in the big tent. We
In the big
just
tent.
don't know who the conductor is of it all. So
That's true. Like, yeah, is it the global elite? Is it the Illuminati? Or is it Nancy
or what
Pelosi,
the new word cabal is out there, the cabal,
the
they're
cabal?
calling it. I've seen it a lot lately on mainstream stuff. I'm like, what?
Really?
What?
That's interesting. Yeah, because they don't usually mainstream doesn't admit that there is a cabal or
What's a
that
cabal?
cabal, hidden
What is
secret
it?
society
I
that
don't know.
Illuminati. I don't know. I was going to say Illuminati might be considered a cabal, but I don't know if that's true.
I don't
They're a
know.
secret
I don't know.
society. I think a
Something.
cabal. Well, in this day and
There's lots
age
of secret societies.
of Google, well, there are. Yeah, there are lots of secret societies, but
The Knights Templar, I can think of them. Yeah.
all right, I'm googling it right now. Let's see, cabal.
There's a documentary on them right now. You know, it, here is the thing. What we're
What's the thing?
going through right now is again, nothing new under the sun. Nothing new. And I'm going to bring up some biases and some elections from even 50 years ago, that the things that were on the ticket that were the platforms that they were running on. Anything that has whatever their policies. I mean, that's the key word right now. What are your policies going to be? Well, here's the thing. The president doesn't even create those, and he just he or she okays the policies. Like this is the platform they're running on, but if the House and Congress are not there, they have to approve it. So in an election and a platform, what they're running on is what they say they're going to try to change, but the real power is in the House and the Senate. So I
Well,
don't
there is this thing.
understand where they think, one party can sway the policies over, whatever ticket is running and whoever wins, but it depends on the majority of the House or the Senate. And sometimes they're equal, right? So they kind of go off each other. So again, it's negotiation time. So
We don't have much of
a
that. They don't have much of that. They haven't negotiated well for, I don't know,
long time,
10 years or more.
a long time.
And so, yeah, there's always the the majority, and if it's close or even, you got the vice president who votes to break the tie.
Right.
So usually the majority
Right.
will be able to get that through. But what's interesting about that is they don't. In fact, I wonder if Bush, if Trump or even Biden. No, I think Biden got some push, some laws passed without a completely divided House, and that the vice president had to vote it. And when that happens, the mainstream media basically says, "Oh, well, you only push that through because you're the majority," and then they downgrade it, or they poo poo it, saying that wasn't the will of the people, whatever. But then if the
Right.
opposite party gets in that next year, the same thing happens. So we really haven't had negotiation for a long time. And then there is these things called executive orders that the president can do
Right.
without
And
the
that's all
approval.
they've been doing.
That's all they've been doing.
That's the only thing they've been using. And it used to be you didn't do an executive order
Right.
unless it was dire.
Right.
And now the last 2 terms, 3 terms, they use the executive order is just like
And it ping pongs, right? One
their
president
carte
will-
blanche.
The thing
Yeah.
about it is that the new president comes in and just overturns all those executive orders because they don't have to be passed by Congress.
Right.
It's a crazy world, and yeah, I mean that's just one part
More
of
than
it.
a
But
crazy world.
you
Yeah.
you want to really talk about bias, right? What did you want to focus on in? I mean, we've got the opportunity for the first female president. Well, we've had that opportunity before, but again, to have the first
We
female
have.
president,
Right. And you're right. Hillary Clinton was the first one on the ticket to ever be in a campaign for president. They actually, and obviously she lost. And when I remember women being so defiant with other women at the time, I do recall this with her campaign, is that if you weren't voting for her, almost exactly, if you weren't a woman voting for her, then that meant you were against women,
right?
and you weren't with the feminist movement. And so that was interesting. And so as it comes around again, you're hearing the same rhetoric that if you aren't for the woman candidate, that somehow you aren't for women's rights and women's, anything to do with women. So that's interesting because that doesn't happen with men.
Nope.
It doesn't happen with men. Men don't run just because a man is on the ticket, right? Like they don't go, you're not a man unless you vote for a man. If you will vote for a woman, you're not a man. I mean, that's not said. But yet us as females or women, we're like, well, we need to stand up. I mean, this will be the chance that we have to be the first woman president. And in my circles, or in circles I've heard, not all of them, but some circles, I don't know, why is it that men don't trust women in that role? And why is it, that they only trust a man in that role?
Yeah,
I don't
know.
think that's
Well, first of all, we should point out that, of course, it's not all men that think that way and that don't trust a woman in it. And then the second thing is, I think that it's gonna take time, since we've never had a woman in there. It's just once we finally get the first woman in there, then it'll be more open to that. I think so. And it is unfair, and it's like there is an uphill climb because of this male-dominated, governmental but also organizational component that's just been there throughout time, back in biblical times, whatever. It just is, and it is amazing to me that it hasn't been completely evened out yet. Like it's still around. Like oh
right.
my God, it's actually
they
if
don't
you really
think
think
a
about
woman,
it.
if they don't think a woman president can be a world leader And it's because of the division from other countries that don't let women even, they weren't letting women vote, or they were letting them vote, but making it very hard for them to vote on purpose. So it's those countries that don't have respect for a woman in that role. Even though we had Queen Elizabeth over in Britain, right? She had a woman prime minister, Margaret Thatcher. So it's not that women haven't been in those roles.
No,
They
there's a lot of
have.
women. There's a lot of women that have been in the presidency
Right.
or prime minister. Like we just heard the other day. There's in Thailand, the prime minister is a woman, and she's the youngest woman, actually, like 37.
Hmm.
And so it definitely happens in other countries, but in
It definitely does.
supposedly the
I mean,
freest
look at
country.
South Korea. South
Why?
Korea. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples. Why the country that prides itself on freedom, that says it's the most open, democracy, has never had one, had never had a woman
Right.
president. It's really about time. Unfortunately, I probably wouldn't have voted for either one, and it's not because they're women. It's just their policies that I don't personally agree with. But there
But
are,
do we know the policies yet? That's the question.
well,
This
yeah,
one
I think we do.
didn't even get nominated first, as on the ticket. So it kind of was, hey, we're picking her. Okay, now go, vote for the primary to pick her,
Yeah,
but that's who they picked. I mean,
but
they
nobody
didn't
really
give a
voted.
choice.
Didn't I?
They
I
did
don't think.
not give a choice this time at all. Like,
And who
that's who's
voted? There
running.
wasn't really a vote, right, for her. There was.
No.
It was the
I mean, they had
they
to officially do
they
it on the
whoever
primary.
whoever that
Mhm.
is, that they're the representative for the Democratic Party. And actually, what it starts today, right? It's funny. I haven't heard a lot of press about the Democratic convention.
No,
I mean, they
very
kind of
weird.
talk about it, but they really haven't much. And then,
Yeah,
wow, I don't know. That's kind of weird. But
right. So the
yeah,
bias about we're making it a bigger deal, I think, and like you were saying, over in other countries, it's already been the queen. She was the head of, I mean, she's not of their government system. That's why they have a prime minister. But she was the queen, and then she did have a woman prime minister.
yeah. I think the thing
Margaret
about Margaret Thatcher
Thatcher.
is, there's been
She
kings
was
and
pretty
queens.
tough. Yeah,
She was
yeah,
tough. She was
tough.
tough, and she was good. There's been a lot of really good women, and so there's
That's
precedents
right.
out there. There's no.
So why are we making it a big deal? Right? So
Y-
so why is our
I agree.
country, but we are one of the youngest countries. Like
Right.
our country, as far as being an independent country, is probably the out of the youngest around because 1776. So there you go.
Yeah, that
That's
is
as
interesting. I
old as our
wonder.
country.
That is
Hmm.
interesting. But if you think about it, I mean, back then, they were kings and queens. And for me, maybe you don't agree with this, but for me, that's kind of a whole nother thing. Like kings and queens, to me, they're different than presidents.
The
They're
monarchy is
elected.
a whole different
They're a
system.
monarchy. They're born into
It was
it.
about
It's a
their
whole,
blood. It was about
yeah.
their DNA.
So they're born into it, kind of
had
a
nothing
thing.
to do with their leadership skills or anything
Yeah.
or what they thought. It was just their birthright.
So when it comes
They
to presidencies or prime ministers or whatever, the day-to-day running of the government, it's it's still a big thing. We are young, and yet other countries like Britain have had women, and there's lots of countries that have. Why haven't we? And why is it such a big deal? Although I really think that the right woman would totally get in. I just I mean, my guess is that you think that there is a definite bias out there. I think there definitely is. I'm not saying
well,
there isn't,
he-
but I do think
well, just
that a
like
woman could
when
get elected.
Obama ran, he ran as the first man of color to run and win as president.
And that
So
broke
now
that
they're
precedent.
presenting her, Kamala, as the first woman of color to be. So there is a distinction. They're giving a distinction. But here's where I have a problem with this is because we've tried so hard to not be divided. Like Like, let's stop dividing us by our color, by our ethnicity, by our heritage, by all these things. Let's try to just, go get past this if we can. And now it's come back around as that's the platform that we're running with. And it's like, how can we get away from it if that's all we do is make a big deal about it? Like, I don't understand how we're going to get away from that, because if everybody doesn't want each other to see color from another person, then why are we running in that way? Now, I'm saying that as a pale, Caucasian woman. So maybe I don't have a right to say that, or maybe you feel differently. And if you do, I would love for you to comment, because I understand, because I don't understand. I'm not in your shoes. So that is the difference, though, is like, I don't know how we're going to win this, because it's like, if we go one way, it's like wrong. And if we go the other way, it's wrong. So where's the right in the middle? Like,
Don't you think though
where
that
do we go with this?
well, don't you think that now that Obama was the first person of color, that's less of a big deal than it was? The first time is always a big deal. It just is, right? Because it's never been done.
Breaking the glass ceiling is what they call it.
So my
breaking
guess,
the glass ceiling.
my guess is that after there is a woman president, after that, it won't be as big a deal because we won't be able to call it the first. I don't know. So I think it will get better. But until the first one, it's always going to be that.
Are we only voting because of that reason? And some people do. That's what I'm saying.
You're right.
That's why I'm talking about election bias. Because some people are like, well, I identify because I'm a woman of color and I'm a woman. Right. So I'm going to vote for her because of that one reason. Sometimes I don't even look at the other reasons. It's like, yay, she's breaking the glass ceiling. So there is the problem, is like, but again, it just gets so convoluted, and it's upsetting that we give this much attention and distraction, both just on the surface level things, not about the things that actually matter, which is, how are you going to turn around our economy? How are you going to turn around the immigration? How are you going to turn around war? What are you going to do in those instances? That's what I want to know. I don't care about the superficial part. I want to know what you stand on and why. And I want you to be clear about that. But at the same time, I'm not dumb enough to know that even though you're running on that platform with those policies, that you don't have a lot of control over that once you get into that role. You have the House and the Senate, who can override anything you're trying to do, which has happened many, many times with presidents. They run on a ticket and they say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And their hands were tied. They couldn't do any of that. So there's where people have to get a little smarter on who they put in those seats. Who is your House of Representatives? Who is your senator? Who are those people that are making policy changes and writing documents that are 900 pages, thousands of pages? What are what are how do they mediate? What are their conflict resolution skills? Like we need to get to that place, like where we're scrutinizing their roles more so than the president.
Yeah, I agree.
More so.
I agree.
And it's just amazing that people don't get that. Like, we think that we're picking the president. Well, the Electoral College does. Well, the Electoral College actually has a bias. And I want you guys to look that up. And I want you to Google it, Electoral College bias. And when you look that up, you'll be like, oh, okay. So when people, and I think that people don't understand government is what I think. I think they think that somehow if they vote for this president on this ticket, that they're going to win or lose. What they don't understand is there's more to it than that. The Electoral College is the one who votes after you vote. And it matters what they think, And a lot of times it matters what state you're in. And I'm going to show this in a second. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Dun, 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 dun. Share. I can't really see what I'm sharing. Okay, here we go. Let's start with this one. Okay, I'm going back 50 years. Okay, and this is happens to be the year I was born, but it was the 46th quadrennial United States presidential election. And you can go to this website 270towin.com, and it shows all of the elections and who was running, who their opponents were, and it mattered because here we go. So obviously we know red and blue. So you can see on here and look at right here. There's these states were gold. In 1968, this guy, George C. Wallace, was an independent. He got those states because it says right here, Wallace won the electoral votes for those states because he was running on segregation. Here, let me show that. Okay, so he won entire states' electoral votes. He promoted segregation. So at the time, that was still an issue, right?
Yeah.
Look at the states that were gold.
It's
right?
amazing to me that just it wasn't that long ago, I was
years
alive,
ago.
and
Only 50 years ago.
I remember, him locking the doors to colleges and universities, and I mean, he won that many states that those southern states were still entrenched with segregatism.
Now look at
segregation.
This. It says Nixon won North Carolina. However, one elector cast a vote for Wallace in North Carolina. Look at that. He got one electoral vote there. But look at, I mean, that was really red. Look, Alaska was red, a lot of, and of course the blue states, which are still pretty much this, except for Texas. Texas, I think, just turned red.
Look at California, been blue for a while, but not back then.
Right. That's only 50 years ago. And this shows you, what was going on during this time. So this is a really neat website and now I'm going to go to, in 1972, again, Nixon was still in there. And he look at that. Is that crazy?
Yeah.
They did not like George McGovern. Look at that. They didn't like him at all, apparently. It mattered.
Especially since Nixon got impeached, got thrown out.
And look at that. 26 amendment ratified in this cycle, 18-year-olds allowed to vote. So there was a change in voting. Okay. So then, of course, Nixon won. Look at that. In 1972, and he resigned on 1974. Of course, we know why, because of Watergate. So it really did matter who the vice president is. It really does matter who it is, just in case the president has to resign or something happens to the president, right?
Right.
So the issues of the day were Vietnam. Let's see. Yeah, Watergate, of course. So that just shows you that's crazy. I mean, that's pretty amazing that they were pretty red then. Now let's go to 2020. Okay. Now we know in 2020, which was, right after COVID hit, right? Mm-hmm. So here we are. It's not letting me click that. Now, look at this. The election saw a record number of ballots cast early and by mail due to the ongoing pandemic. As a result, the large number of mail-ins, some swing states saw delays in vote counting and reporting. It led to major news outlets delaying the projection of Biden and Harris as the winners. So, that had that made a big impact, right? I mean, but look at how many blue states there are now and versus the red states. So, I mean,
scroll down a little bit.
Issues of the day, COVID-19. Let's see. She was the first woman elected to be vice president. Received more votes than any prior presidential candidates. I think that they had more votes because of the mail-in, don't you? I mean, I think that that really impacted it because people didn't want to go out and vote. They went, because of COVID. But mail-in really did make an effect, because a lot of people don't take the time out of their day to go vote, you know? So,
Yeah, it was definitely different, and we'll see
mhm,
this year when we're going to have mail in also, and
exactly.
where it isn't quite as charged. I just think people were tired of Trump, and yeah, there were more people voting, but they could have voted for Trump, and I just think that people were tired. So we'll
And
see.
poor, this guy was a libertarian. He got zero electoral votes. Whoever that was, I don't even remember that person. And I was pretty around, you know.
Scroll up a little
Um,
bit. Who was it? What was the name?
his name was Joe Jorgensen.
Oh, yeah, I don't either. Because
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
he got
was,
a million votes. Look at that. He got a million popular votes.
well, it's interesting because I think I thought about that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to vote for either of these guys.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Yeah.
So, so I mean, it's really interesting to look at. And I'm going to stop sharing this, but I just think that we need more education. We need more education on, you know, why are you voting this way? If you're watching any of the mainstream, and I mean any of them, CNN to Fox, you're going to be getting inundated by the propaganda. And they're both propaganda machines. They're both news outlets. I mean, they're going to tell you their views, and they're going to keep telling you their views, and they're going to, and each person that comes up on that news show is going to mimic the one that was on there last and tell you exactly what the last one said, so that you'll keep hearing it, because that's where they get us. They get us by convincing us because we hear it over and over. So it's really important that you guard yourself on the propaganda tool, because that's how they do it. They do it by um, uh, they just keep on continuing, repeating, repeating, repeating. That's how you're taught in school. That's how we were trained to learn in school, is by memorization, is by repeating things. So this is how they use the propaganda tool against us, is because our brains, our learning is already, we've already been trained to think like that instead of being free thinkers. Like everybody in the classroom, how do what letter is this? What letter is this? What letter is this? So we were trained early on from the very beginning on how we are to follow everyone else, and how to learn. And so this is where we have to challenge ourselves to unlearn those ways and think for ourselves and go, is that really the person that I want to vote for? I mean, we have a third party on the ticket, Kennedy. And does anybody really know anything about him? No, because nobody will let him speak, really. Like I've seen
Yeah.
him on one mainstream thing where they interviewed him.
Yeah. If you
And
don't
here's
watch
the thing.
YouTube or
He's got a big name behind him.
alternative media,
Kennedy. He's a Kennedy. And the other Kennedys aren't even backing that Kennedy
right?
because they think he's too, I don't know, out there.
Well,
They don't want to be
they want to honor the
right.
Democratic Party, and they were really mad
Right.
that he left and went
And
independent.
and
But
if you look at the Democratic Party and the Republican parties and follow it through history, both of them have changed drastically on their platforms, on what they stand for, etc. You just have to look yourself. You know, that's the thing, is we're told, oh, well, you know, the Republicans are bad and they're against, they're racist. I mean, I've heard that recently. Like anybody Republican is, you know, conservative and against, the letter communities, against people of color, against all of this. It's like, who is saying that? Like, why? What? Who? Because if they look back at the Democratic Party, they're the ones that were started in a racial way, and nobody wants to believe that somehow. It's really bizarre. It's really bizarre how propaganda has created this. Media has created whatever narrative they want you to believe, that you believe it. So who are you following? Like, whose voice are you following? Like, what are you researching? Are you paying attention to, what the platforms really are and what they're running on? Like, if you ask me, everybody says, oh, well, Trump's better for the economy. Okay, what's he going to do for the economy? I want to know. You know, I heard tips for, no taxes on tips. That's all I've heard so far. And I know he said more than that, but that's all the mainstream is letting you hear, is that one thing. And then Harris turned around and said the same thing. So now they make it seem like they're equal somehow. Like, oh yeah, she's going to run on the same policy, and that's how she's going to change around the economy. What? Again, if you're not plugged into the media sources, where are you getting your information? Like, what is it that you're reading and following? Because Scott, you are a person that's following it in real time, the economy, because you're studying currency. So what's happening with the stock market? What's happening? Here's where you'll know where our economy is if you follow that versus what the media is saying. And I just think that they give us this, platter of what they want us to pick on. They're only giving us, cafeteria style, here's what we want you to think that this person stands for. But you really need to do some more research than that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to expect much from somebody running on the same ticket that we're coming out of. I'm going to expect the same from this person because they're in office already. They're already there. So what they're going to be running on is what they're already doing. So that's just logical to me. I don't know about you. That seems logical. And honestly, it seems logical that Trump's going to do the same thing he did the last time, right? Like he's going to come back in and do the same things as last time. Now it's up to you to decide if you're okay with what he did last time to now. It's up to you. Are you okay with this? Are you okay the way the economy is? Now, are there external forces against our economy? Yes, of course there are. There's wars going on. We're giving out trillions of dollars for wars that were not during Trump's time. So you have to look at those factors too. Do we have more jobs than we did back then? Was unemployment worse than it is now? Or was it because maybe there was a pandemic? Maybe people were out of work because there was a pandemic, So there was a surge of new jobs because they had to be created because they were shut down from a pandemic. So, I mean, we have to look at all of the variables, and it's up to you to do your research. It's up to you to figure it out. Not for me to tell you, not for Scott to tell you. That's why this is called Truth Bomb. The Truth Bomb is your own truth on what you find out and figure out for yourself in these candidates. Do you relate more to one because of what they stand for, or are you doing it because of their gender and their race? You get to decide. I mean, if you want to vote that way, that's up to you. Again, nobody's going to take that right from you. You can actually pick a person. Okay, let's just say baseball players. I remember when growing up that when people would challenge you, okay, what team are you behind? And us girls, probably would pick the color that we liked. And if we thought the guy was cute. Okay, can I just say that? I mean, that's so superficial. We had no idea about the stats. And you boys were out there, well, so-and-so has an RBI of this and that and the other, and he does more home runs and, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, we don't care. We like the color and we think he's cute. And that's that, right? So, I mean, those are,
But you
That's
were
what mattered to us.
you were young girls. You were young. Do
Right?
you think people still do that today? Old women, grown up women?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Men too. Men too. If who are you going to pick? Again, we still have beauty pageants for goodness sakes. Okay. I mean, we still have them, right? Like, like she wins because she's pretty and she's smart and she can speak eloquently or articulately, you know,
Yeah, isn't
is
that
that why she's
interesting?
there?
They used to be a much bigger deal. They've kind of lost their luster,
Yeah.
but you're right. They're still there. They still get reported on.
Well, and Trump is associated with
He used to
that,
be.
right?
He used to own or yeah, be part owner of the
Right.
pageant
So
or
this is
whatever.
why a woman who is a feminist, who believes in, women's rights, women who, we feel like we've been downtrodden, the patriarch, the da 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 da. I'm sure they're not going to vote for Trump. Positive that they will not, because he's been in pageants. He just got, through a court case about a woman who was a, stripper, whatever she was, or whatever. Um, Again, associated with women, derogatory, you know. And
Hey,
so,
this is a good chance on that topic to show. I want to show this because it fits right into this. If you don't mind, check this
yeah,
out.
no problem. Yeah.
So I just saw this the other day, and it just fits in here. And so this is interesting. Like, what candidate? And again, I'm not for one side or the other. I'm just saying, look at what's happening already. Trump calls Kamala Harris beautiful during an Elon Musk interview. He ended up saying that she looked. I think she was on the cover of Time, and the reporter's asking about something, and she's like, "Yeah, she looks like the most beautiful actress ever. She looks like Melania." And I think it's just funny because no other candidate would do that. But Trump is being Trump and, just says stuff. And now this week he's trashing her. I mean, they're running against each other. That can be expected. But he is so unpredictable. Maybe you would say he's predictable in his craziness or his outrageous things you would say. But I think he's unpredictable and you're not sure what he's going to say. I mean, for him to come out and say that, it's just whoa. And I mean, I don't think you have to be, stretch your imagination to think that maybe Trump is a tad bit biased. I mean, the guy does not have a filter on what he says and what he tweets. And that is the kind of thing.
I don't like the way he speaks about women. Absolutely not.
No.
I do not.
I mean,
and I'm a woman. I don't like it. I don't like it.
But you're going to you're going to think beyond that. That's the thing. That's like what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, I don't particularly like this, but I've got to look at the whole thing. Just as if you're a woman and you vote for Harris just because she's a woman, well, you're not really looking at the whole picture, right?
No.
And,
No.
I just wonder, about what's it going to take? What motivation will it take for more people to not take the easy way to make these decisions? Because one of the things that I've recently been looking at and studying is, if you look at evolution and you look at the way our brains were created, our brains take up so much energy of what we eat and our fuel, and they need to protect the body, right? And so evolutionary, we're always trying to protect ourselves from harm. And one of the things that is hard is critical decision making. That takes up a lot of calories in the brain. And so the brain, again, through evolution, it says, I can't expel that many calories. So I've got to figure out a way to use less calories so I can, maintain longer. And less calories is using something that's easier than critical thinking, which is emotions. So when we have an emotional situation or we see a situation and it affects us emotionally, whether positive or negative, that gets embedded into our psyche and into our brains, into the neural networks, and they become really thick bands of networks because they're emotionally charged. So the next piece of information that comes into our world, the easiest thing to do is tap into that large neural network that's like a big, huge superhighway of making a decision.
That's right.
Making a critical decision means there's all these new things I've got to think about. I don't have any neural networks in my brain already configured for that. So I've got to like create new neural networks. That takes a lot of calories. I just think that's fascinating when you can kind of tie back some of these things that like, why do we always do this? Why do we not pay attention? And why do we just take the press's word for it? And if, like gossip and whatever, and we take that, we don't critically think about it. That's one reason. And so my question is, what's it going to take to overcome that powerful, innate being of, I got to conserve calories. I don't want to think too hard. If this guy on TV is just telling me that this is the way it is, I'll just believe it.
But see, this is why we need to relearn. We need to relearn the way we learn.
Yeah.
So we, from kindergarten, again, we learned by repeating things. We didn't, we were told, memorize this sentence, memorize this word, memorize this definition. We were told exactly how to learn. Now, what if we weren't? Like, what if we hadn't been taught how? What if we had been given questions even then? Like, what do you think about, give some information and then ask kids what they think about that. How did they absorb it? How did they retain it? I think that would change a whole conversation of learning. I think it would open up their minds to start thinking for themselves and on how to disseminate the information in their own brains and to learn the way that they can relearn. Because
I think that would be huge. And I think that there are teachers, I've seen and read about teachers that do that. They make the kids critically think and use, like, they don't just feed them the basics. But the overall school system doesn't do that.
But all the wealthy families, for father families, what they used to do is they would hold school in they had Montessori schools, or they had boarding school where they had to go away and learn because they couldn't be distracted. And a teacher was dedicated to that student, So they were learning a lot faster because they had more focused attention on them specifically. And unfortunately, that they were even influenced by that. Like, their parents would be like, okay, I really want them to learn this way. And, and it was guided. It was a guided learning. That still happens
today. That still happens today. Rich people, governmental people. What really kills me is that when government officials and elected officials say, we're for education. We want everybody to have, a great education. And yet they don't send their kids to public school. They send them to private school. That's hypocritical. And it's all over the place. Doesn't matter what party you're in. That happens.
Right. That debt. I just read about somebody, had their child's debt, taken away from the, college debt relief. And,
oh, yeah.
They're a higher up in government, right? So it's kind of like, wow, like, I don't know. We could say it's unfair all the way around, but it's really up to us as people is to train our children and to teach our children on, on these things. It's kind of up to us too,
Sure.
The parents are not off the hook.
Oh,
you
definitely.
don't just send your kids off to school. I mean, I remember doing that at one point, just sending them off to school because I was so tired. I was working full-time job, taking care of the house, doing this and that. And you just send your kids off to school, like, you don't know what they're being taught. I know what they're being taught now. I didn't then. I had no idea the indoctrination of certain theories and certain, foundational things that I certainly would not have agreed with they were being taught. I had no idea. I had no clue. So it's really up to us to take that, if I can say I regret it, and I do, I could go backwards and I go, I wonder why my kids think so much differently than me. Well, maybe because I wasn't an active participant in teaching them. That would be why. Hello. That's why.
Yeah, no,
So,
teaching them, first of all, understand how important critical thinking is, and that we have to work at it. I mean, again, if we don't work or think about it or try, our innate human behavior will kick in, and it'll be take the easy road. And I hear a lot of people on podcasts or even in the mainstream media or whatever, and when we're saying it's like you should do this, like why don't you think this way or whatever, and
right.
it's really not as simple as that. It's not.
It's really not.
You
No.
have to work at it, and that's why my question is, what will motivate the average person to take the extra time? And I also was very guilty of this too when I was working full time, trying to
Hmm.
do the thing, raise the kids, you know
Right.
with the kids going to all the dang sports, traveling all around the world, all that kind of stuff. It's like I just felt like I had no mental energy left to like squeak out a little
Right.
more critical thinking. So
Right.
so I get it, but boy, if we don't do something, we're just like, I think most people agree that we're in the most turbulent time for not agreeing with each other, and for
Right.
just the left and the right and whatever it is, like we're in this really turbulent time, and if we are just in the echo chamber on whatever side, or the echo chamber of mainstream media, we're
Yeah.
just it's just going to get worse to the point of civil war, which is sort of like, that's what happens. History tells us
Yeah,
that's
we don't want
if we
that.
stay down this road. Now I don't know if we'll solve all the
Well,
answers, but critical thinking
yeah.
will at least help to
I
not
was
just
talking
go
to
down.
I was talking to a friend today, and they brought up, and it was very smartly that they brought this up, um, that it's kind of precarious this time on which way the election's going to go, is how people are going to react. Because I think if we're seeing this extremism on both sides during just campaigning and before the election, how extreme is it going to be afterwards? Either way it goes. So I can't be terribly confident that there's not going to be repercussions of some sort. I don't know what that looks like or what it is, but it's going to come back to, well, that person really didn't win, it was stolen,
Oh
or
yeah.
this person didn't really win, they stole it, like
I think a
like
lot of people
like
are thinking that. A lot of people, I've heard a lot of
it's
people say
gonna,
that.
I mean, on both sides, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
really scary to think about. I mean, both sides going, oh well, if that person wins, it definitely was corrupted
If
by
it's
the
close, I'm telling you, if it's close, in my opinion, there's a 100% chance that there will be controversy of some kind.
which I don't know what that looks like, but I mean, there won't be another January 6th. I'll tell you that. I know
Uh,
there will not be.
I think
I, I,
something.
I don't think
I think
there would.
something potentially worse, or as I don't know. I certainly think so. I mean, I think it's very
And
possible.
so we have to think about that. But maybe if we could ever just have a decent conversation, even on Facebook, for goodness sakes, people, if we could just talk to each other nicely and say, hey, I don't agree with you, but let's agree to disagree. And I have actually seen people state that. Let's just agree to disagree. And then the next thing you know, that person's like, oh, that person was removed off my Facebook timeline. And you're like, well, okay. So anybody that doesn't agree with you
Is
now is
gone.
off of your
You're
timeline.
out of here.
So,
Just
so
ignore
how
them.
many other issues have you never talked about that person doesn't agree with you? Are we just going to start kicking
Again,
people off?
much easier to
I
agree
mean,
with to agree with the people that you like. I mean, it really is. And we've said this before on the shows that
mhm,
we're moderates, we're centrists. We like looking at both sides. Most people
right,
don't, because it's a little bit harder. Now, I will admit that sometimes it's hard being a centrist, because you're like, well, first of all, I get ridiculed a little bit by that, because like, you just have to take a side, like you're just wishy-washy, like pick a side. And I'm just like,
right,
I can, and I do have opinions about things, but I'm definitely willing to listen to the other side. I may not agree,
right,
but I'm willing to listen to it. And I've flip-flopped on a lot of things. I also get that, like, oh, you're wishy-washy, whatever. if I hear something like, well, we talked about this. It's like I was all for the COVID shots, for all that stuff. I was all for it. I'm completely against it now. I told a family member that I'm anti-vaxxer now, kind of joking, but not really, because I've just kind of seen what has happened since then. I've completely switched
Right.
my mind. A lot of
Right.
people don't like that. I think it's fine, but at some point, if we're ever going to not have the Civil War, we are going to have to like at least look at the other side and just at least treat us like
Well,
you're a human. Okay, I may not agree with you, but you're a
right.
human. You're my brother, my sister.
Right.
You know,
Right. I think
no,
I think it's important. I just want to state the reason that we can change our mind and we're centrists is that we actually listen to other people that are giving us new information. So we disseminate that information and go, and then research it ourselves to see if that's truth or not, or if that's an actual fact or not an actual fact. And that's what I can have a good debate with someone if they have good information and I like people that are more educated than me. I want to be in rooms where
right?
other people are more educated than me. I do not want to be in the same room with people who are all at the same level because that's boring. Like,
It's
how are
not
you going to
growth.
learn anything?
You're
But
stunted. It's like, yeah,
right, right. So you have to listen to that information. And sometimes you can change my mind on something if you give me new information that
yeah,
maybe I didn't know. And so I think that it's not being wishy washy, it's just being more enlightened, having a new revelation. So, I mean, I believe in that saying that says if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
yeah.
That's true to a point. I can stand on something that I think I know, but if you bring me new information and I think, that's actually accurate and I agree with that, so maybe I'm going to change my position on this. You know, changing your position is not, saying that you don't stand for anything. That's just changing your position. And it doesn't and it I'm not willing to fight you over you being right or me being right. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fight you for that. I'm just going to let you state your case and I'll sit there and I'll agree with you if that's what you need. if you need me to if you need to win, I will let you win in your own mind. But I will sit
Right,
back and I will say, okay, that if you believe you're right, then you're right. You know,
right. I love it. If you
I
believe
mean,
you're right, then you're
I'm not
right.
gonna change. Yeah. I mean, why am I going to fight you on that if I see that you're oppositional? Now, if I see that you're like me, who is a moderate and might listen to new information, I will share that new information. But if I can already tell that you've got that, I need to control something, I need to be right, and I'm just going to fight everybody with my words, then I'm out. You
Yeah,
win.
yeah. I used to. I used
I don't
to.
need to do that.
I used to be afraid of, because I was a centrist, I would be afraid of really holding one position, especially on social media. And
Hmm.
I thought, the people that know me really well, they'll know my position. But then I just realized it doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Go ahead and put it out there. For me, again, just because I put it out there doesn't mean that next year or month it might be different. But that'll be because I've talked to people, I've processed it, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
And it doesn't really matter because really, whatever you say, there'll be a lot of people against you. The question is, and if those people that want to argue against you, it's like, okay, does it? I don't know. For some people like that, maybe it doesn't bother them or they don't get worked up. It seems like sometimes when they put things in all caps, like they're getting worked up. And I'm like, life is too short. Like, I don't want to waste like brain cells on that kind of stuff. I want to be doing it, putting it my effort, my energy towards something else. But I'll tell you,
Right.
there has been times where I've read something or I've seen something and in my mind I'm like, oh my God. And sometimes I've even typed it out, but I very rarely, if ever, send it. I'm just like, I'm not gonna send it. Like what is that gonna do? Like I'm not gonna convince them. And I don't
Right.
want to or care really. And the thing about back to a marketing standpoint, you want to attract people that basically are going to agree with you and like what your position. Now in marketing, that's a good thing, right? Because that's how you get paid, basically. In life, though, life isn't necessarily about marketing. People might think it is, but the bottom line of marketing is you need to attract people, but it has to be authentic. And if that's your authentic you, those are the people you want to attract. You don't want to
Yep.
say stuff that attracts the false people or whatever. And I guess in life, that's the same thing too. We just want people to be authentic. And if that's how you really feel, I probably won't be your follower. And if you don't want to be my follower, that's great. We don't want to waste time.
Right. Right.
Well, is there anything last minute here? We got a couple minutes left for the top of the hour. Anything that you want to just really ground in about this topic before we end?
Well, I want to just bring to your consciousness on what is your bias. Maybe what have been your biases in the past. If you voted in the past, what did you vote on? Like, what were the platforms? What were the reasonings? And then take it to today and try to figure out, okay, is this candidate really the person that I want to be in that role? That has access to the red button, So,
Right.
But you have to also come back to the realization that there's a whole bunch of people behind that person and that they control certain things in the government and it's not just them. So you need to educate yourself on what the positions of those people are. You even need to know how many more years does your senator have in office, like how long is that person going to be in there? What did they run on? What is their platform? For me, I pay attention to the governor elections almost more than the president because I feel like my governor is more powerful in my world,
in your world,
in my little world, than even the president is. So you need to pay attention to your government and how it runs.
There are people that are moving, that are literally moving states only because of that. There are a lot of people that live in California or New York. They're just like, I can't get on board with the governors of these states, and they're doing that, and they move. I mean, that would have been unheard of before, but I would go that far. I might go that far. And I think
I'm not ever going to speak against you because of the way that you voted. If I like you, you're my friend, you're my family, you're whomever, I will still love you and like you regardless of your vote. That should never have anything to do with your personal relationship with someone. Because if you look down on someone else because of the way they vote, you're the problem, not them. Like, it's you.
Good point.
So make sure that you're not doing that. Looking down on people is ridiculous in this area because a lot of times, like I said, you're not in control of this. You're not.
You're not in control.
You are in control of your relationships.
You're in control of your relationships. And the way I look at it too, it's like there are, like you said, there are people behind the president that have a lot of influence on what goes on in that administration or cabinet. Yeah. I'm also a big believer in no matter what happens at the presidential level, there are a lot of people above that are what I call the global elites that are pulling a lot of strings and have a lot of power. Politicians, presidents in countries all over the world may not have as much power as you think. Yeah, they can do a lot of things that may affect your day to day, but overall, especially over time, over 8 years, over 10 years, are they really, what's really going to happen? And so I kind of just, unfortunately, I've lost the zest for voting. It's not that I'm not going to vote, but it's like, geez, I just don't know if it's going to matter one way or the other. But, I will have to look at somebody's face on my screens.
I want to vote the Federal Reserve.
Oh,
I want to vote the Federal Reserve. Can we do that, please?
Vote them in or out? I mean, we could just vote them completely out. Yeah, let's just completely vote them out.
And that's the other thing is people don't even know. They think, oh yeah, the Fed raised the interest rates or lowered them. I'm like, do you even know who the Fed are? Did you know that they're not government employees?
Well, or what I hear a lot is, oh, that administration, that Biden or that Trump, man,
Yes.
they raised the interest rates or whatever. I'm like,
They did not.
they did not. It was the Fed. The Fed has their own mandate. They're completely separate. They're not even officially connected. Although, isn't it interesting? I don't know if you saw this, but Trump wants to federalize the Fed, basically make them beholden to him, which is so interesting. I'm not even saying that's bad. It's just funny. Maybe to be even better, right? Because the Fed being this independent thing, I don't like, and
No.
maybe it would be even better. But
It
you're right.
was
People don't know that they're
always-
not government.
It was always to separate the government officials from them so that the government officials could still
Right.
make money. And it
Well,
not
and the
be
Fed
offi-
too, right? They both want it. They both
and it
make a
not,
lot of
and
money.
it not look like it was officially making them money.
Yeah, like it
That's
wasn't
why
political.
Most of our people in the
And yet,
House and the Senate have
the
lots
funny
of
thing
money.
is-
How do they have lots of money? I just wonder if you ever ask yourself, how do they have lots of money? I don't know.
Right. Again, I'm
Hello.
not voting for. I'm not
It's called
advocating
the
really for
lobbyist
either one.
people.
Did
It's
you
a-
know that
it's a lobby.
it is interesting that whatever that the Harris's running mate, apparently he owns no stocks and doesn't have any bonds or stocks or whatever, which is unique for a politician. Because a lot
Look
of them
at me.
do. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I didn't fact find it. His great uncle's sister's cousin has some stocks, though.
That's where he gets his money, the
Right.
old family money, I guess.
Right,
Who
there you go.
knows?
All righty.
Right.
Well, I think we hit this topic pretty good.
We did. What
Thanks
are your
for joining.
comments? We want to know. Yeah. Please,
Let us-
please go on our platform and tell us what you think.
Let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know your opinion. What is the
Yes.
truth bomb in your life? All right, folks, we will see you next week. Thanks again. See you next time.